Good morning and welcome to Codec's security webinar this morning on Zero Trust Rapid Adoption from a customer's perspective. So we're going to start off with just a quick overview on Codec, and today's presenters is myself, Jennifer Mara. I'm an Enterprise Account Manager in Codec, and Tushar Kumar, who is our Security Practice Lead and an MVP for Microsoft, but works for Codec. Thank you. So just to tell you a little bit about Codec, for those of you who don't know us, we're a 40-year-old business. We were established on the 1st of August 1985. We've 300 plus employees and we've long-standing relationships with our customers. We are an Azure MSP expert and we've got 3 Microsoft MVPs in the business. Our focus has been on providing professional and managed services underpinned by Codec's own cloud accelerators and AVC implementation methodologies. To date, we've just finished our financial year, which is the 31st of July, and our revenues for last year and for 2024 is 50 million. We've our Net Promoter Score, which is where we survey our customers on projects that we've done. This year we've achieved 74. Which is a great score and a great recognition from our customers on the work that we've done in the last 12 months. Our Azure business is on a 58% increase year-to-date growth rate. And we also have our D365 and Power Platform business, who's at 37% increase. We established an office in the UK and we get 32% of our revenue from our UK office. To date, we've got 200 plus active customers. We are the largest independent Microsoft partner in Ireland, and our business is broken into 4 pillars. Our Microsoft Business Applications business, which is where our Dynamics business would sit, and we've got the largest practice in the country. We have built our own Microsoft Labs, which we have 2 products, which is the Portal Accelerator and the Codec Regulate, which have been very successful products that we've actually developed ourselves. We've got the Azure Cloud, which is where the security practice sits, and which is headed up by Stephen Black, our head of Azure. We also have our shared services, which is our QA and our BA teams, and our PMO team sits on that in that pillar as well. Our accreditations have been all in the Microsoft ecosystem, of which we have 7 designations, and our specializations have been in business applications, security, modern work, the Microsoft Cloud, infrastructure for Azure, data and AI, and the digital and app innovation in Azure. Our existing advanced specializations that we're focusing on this year is we're hoping to achieve our AI and machine learning on Azure in the next 3 months, and we've already achieved all of the other specializations listed below, which has been a great a recognition of our expertise in these areas. I'm going to pass you over to Tushar now, and he's going to walk you through the agenda for the day. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Jenny. Let me share my screen here. Okay, perfect. So, very good morning, everyone. This is Tushar, and I'm going to walk you through the agenda for today. Basically, we will be starting with a quick introduction. We will have a quick look at the Zero Trust maturity model. Once we're gone through that, we'll see what exactly sits under the 6 pillars of Zero Trust and how that translates into the Microsoft world of Zero Trust architecture. Post that, we have a program basically that's called Rapid Zero Trust Adoption, and I'll give you a full overview at how that flows through within your organization. And we will see a real world customer scenario where the customer was having some challenges and how it all got solved with the Microsoft products and the solutions that we are going to talk within this webinar today. So without any ado, let's just move along. So first thing is we are going to talk about zero trust, and we need to understand why exactly we are talking about and what exactly involves within zero trust, right? So, why are we having this zero trust conversation? First thing is IT security is complex. So when we are looking at IT security, there is loads of devices, users, connections, different networks, things are coming in. You have your trusted networks where all the initial attacks comes in. You have basically lower network security, which is making you exposed to many threats within your organization. Your assets are increasing quite rapidly at the moment, so there is loads of companies going for bring your own device scenarios. You have people working from home, you have mobile devices coming in, and your critical assets are being accessed over mobile devices. And we are also looking at loads of SaaS solutions as well. And that's where we are losing a lot. We are gaining a lot in terms of productivity, but we are losing a lot in terms of security as well. The biggest challenge that we have at this point is the traditional attacks are going away. Still there are a few traditional attacks that is still in picture, but most of the attacks are getting shifted in on identity based. Okay, whereas your users are getting impacted with the phishing attacks or credential thefts kind of thing. The security team is being overwhelmed by different kind of alerts and a different kind of I would say a more of alert fatigue, where they're getting loads and loads of false positives or maybe coming in from different sources that they are not able to comprehend, or that they are having issues with. So so basically, that is the base of this conversation today, right? So we will first look at what is zero trust maturity model. So understanding zero trust maturity model is first thing, what is zero trust? So zero trust is, I would say, it's a guidance around the overall security posture within your organization, which basically works on three basic principles, which first one says assume breach. Second one says verify everything explicitly. Third one is use the least privilege access. When I say assume breach, basically you are considering within your organization and you are preparing for there is always a breach. That's where you're looking at each and every aspect of your organization infrastructure, making sure that okay, if anything looks anomalous, you're basically taking it, you're reacting towards it. Verify explicitly is basically making sure that anyone or anything, any application that is coming into your environment is basically verified and it is getting a proper checks before you give them access to your critical assets. And the last one, we have been doing it for a really long time. Like, okay, in the traditional domain controller scenario, we should not be giving like local admin access to this virtual machine, or you should not be giving application owner access, or you should on your application, or you should be using the least privilege and the role-based access, whatever that particular person needs or whatever that particular application needs to communicate to others, right? So these are the three basic principles, and we are going to see how these will translate into actual environment. And basically, that will span across from your identities, from your infrastructure, from your IoT or your operational security. Your SecOps needs to be integrated with that as well, and that along with your data security and governance as well. So there are three stages of the zero trust maturity model. The very first stage, what we call it as a traditional stage, where we are looking at specifically customers who are very early or haven't even started with the zero trust journey. So what they are looking at is they have on-premises identity. They're using all the static rules. They have a really limited visibility on their devices. That it's a flat networks infrastructure. Like taking an example, once you get into a VM, you can get into any of the resources. Once you connect to a virtual machine, you are connected to the whole organization instead of a specific services. That's more of a traditional one. Moving to a bit of an advance, where we are looking at more of a hybrid identity set, solutions where you have basically fine-tuned policies in there. Your devices are registered with compliant policies. Your network is segmented, and you have like analytics happening, and you're looking at the user, you're looking at the behavior of how users are accessing the resources. The third and the most important, where we go for the optimal stage, where we are looking at more going towards cloud-based identity and having a more of a real-time analytics on your uh, access requests. Basically, for each and every applications and workloads that you are running, there is a basically gated access to those, and you're verifying explicitly before letting people within your environment. You're making sure your data access is totally governed by the severity of the data, or the basically the content that you have within your data. It is end-to-end encrypted from rest to transit as well. You are not believing on the proper, like, let's say, network boundaries only. So let's say if someone is in office, that is a trusted source and it should be having access to everything. So basically taking that out and having more of a automation in place from threat detection and response, and basically making sure you are excluding resources, if you are making sure you're containing any threats that you are seeing. So that's basically the more, and as the name suggests, right, that is basically the optimal state of zero trust maturity that we should be looking at from an organizational perspective. So this all overall spans across, and we will not talk about the big advanced in the middle because no one wants to stay hanging in between, right? From all six pillars perspective, and we'll go and talk about those as well. You need to see that you should be on the optimal state where you have your identities secured, you have your endpoint secured, you have your app secured, you have your infrastructure, network, and data, all of that secured with the zero trust principles. As you can see on the screen and on the very right hand side, you should be having here, yeah, you should be having, and these are the guiding principles around. You should be having basically all the passwordless enabled, your devices and user location behavior analytics should be in place. All of your devices should have some sort of endpoint detection. You should be considering what you're going to do with your bring your own devices scenario, your apps, how people are accessing that, and how we are going to secure those with the zero trust principles, your infrastructure access. You're using just-in-time access kind of scenarios. Your network is not basically a flat network environment. You have more of a micro-segmented, and basically your overall ingress and egress is getting monitored, and you're seeing all the filtration as well on that. And at last, your data is classified, and you have all the decisions based on the data types around that. Okay. So six pillars of zero trust. We just saw the six pillars, and we'll just go each and every one of those. This is a screenshot from a Microsoft website itself. So zero trust should be extended for all over your estate, and these six pillars basically covers your digital estate, what you have within your environment. And any organization, if I pick any organization, I don't think so I'll see any seventh one coming into this. First one is going to be your identities. Second one is should be your devices, your applications, your data, your infrastructure, and your network. Okay, so from Microsoft perspective as well, that aligns totally with this with the overall program. So first thing, from the zero trust deployment perspective, when you're looking at your identities, you need to make sure your identities are using a strong authentication functionality. You need to make sure you are looking at compliance and access compliance. So basically, whoever is logging in, if they are logging in from a specific compliant, I would say compliant region, compliant location, compliant network, or whatever, whatnot you want to decide around that. And then following the least privilege access principles, which will be more of whatever is your job role, you should be having that level of access only instead of going overboard and giving access as a global administrator to your entire ID. Your data, basically, for data perspective, you need to make sure your data is classified and you have labeling around that. You have information protection policies, which is basically making sure anything and everything that is getting written in your environment, that is getting published with by your organization, it is basically controlled, and you have a proper mechanism to make sure that information is protected. The data loss prevention is going to make sure that it is not getting leaked, it is not getting away, it is not getting into any unauthorized sources or any unauthorized. It should not end up any unauthorized places as well. The last two is more of, I would say, from the insider perspective. So the last one is the data governance bit. So data governance basically dictates that you should be knowing that where exactly your data lives. And when I say this, it's more or less you need to know that, okay, this is where I am storing the treasure, or the treasure is basically spread across these five places, just so you can take actions around that, and you should know exactly where exactly the heart of the organization sits from data perspective. And just because someone is working for your organization, or someone is within your organization, it doesn't means that you cannot think of them as a threat as well. Because reason being, someone leaving the organization, and or maybe someone has a personal vendetta with your organization, or maybe you had a fight with your manager and you're like, oh no, now I'm going to take all the information that makes this XYZ company so big. I will download it, or I'll take that out, and then I'll leave the company, I'll give it to the competitor, or I'll just sell it on dark web or do something like that. So a rogue employee, or a rogue or someone doing it unintentionally as well, that needs to be prevented with insider risk management, making sure whenever someone is leaving, whenever someone is in process, and if whenever someone tries within the organization to go for a larger data dump, or going for some sensitive information which they are not supposed to, that gets flagged, and you have a proper visibility around that. Now, from endpoint perspective, so endpoints are basically going to be making sure, and we are going to talk of each one of these from the implementation perspective as well in coming slides. But from endpoints perspective, you need to make sure your devices are getting all the application protection, you're getting all the security configuration pushed to each and every one of your organization devices, and you are getting the risk posture around that okay, Tushar is doing something on his laptop or his system or his workstation at the office that might compromise, or that is not permitted. So that should be one. It shouldn't be people using any applications or rogue applications within their environment, within their laptops or within their workstations, uh, which might get some sort of, I would say, threat to your organization. And one of the biggest example these days that we are seeing is people using unauthorized AIs within their environment, and they're going on Chat GPT or Dark GPT or something like that, and then asking questions around for from confidential data. So I have seen organization, and few of which has low security, people uploading their confidential documents on a chatbot, which is like a publicly published, and basically they are trying to ask questions around that, which is where they are basically which is where they are actually breaking two zero trust principles here, just because the controls are not there. One is from the data security perspective, and second is going for rogue applications. The last one will be, you need to make sure that you have all the policies in terms of compliance of a device. So if a device is being altered, or if a device is getting, because uh, being in tech world, I know it very well. You can't ask me to give up my local admin on my laptop because I'm doing loads of stuff that which is basically requires me to have local admin, or which requires me to install certain applications. But if there is any changes that is happening which is making your device non-compliant, like let's say I have a BitTorrent on my laptop, right? In that case, that device is not compliant, it goes in non-compliance, and you should not be accessing any of the organizational critical resources, and that level of security that we are looking at here. From application standpoint, there is couple of specific recommendations that we need to adhere to from zero trust perspective. So it's not like you have secured your identity, it's you have everything covered from the network perspective, or you have everything covered from the data perspective. You need to make sure your applications are getting the similar level of love from security teams as well, making sure that anything and everything it is limited from roles, your access, and that you are having a real-time analysis of whatever the behavior of users are happening within your applications. So the likes of SharePoint activities, maybe let's say if SaaS applications or a Dynamics activities, that should be controlled, and that should be having basically a monitored environment just to see, okay, if anything goes south, or if you feel like, okay, this user is doing something that it shouldn't be, you should be basically getting alerted around that, and you should be getting that information. Or good old infrastructure, right? So everyone at some point of time, if you're totally out of that scenario, that's very well good for you. But most of the organization at this point of time have some sort of physical, virtual, or cloud servers within their organization. So you need to make sure that you are having a proper access versions. And when I say access for versions, is basically going back in time with your backups, or maybe having a coded version or infrastructure as a code, just so you can go back in time. You should be having a proper configuration management, which is not basically anyone going in and changing something within your servers or your applications. It is more of a with a configuration management tooling, you're doing a proper deployments and everything. Uh, just-in-time access and the just enough access, which is one of the Azure features. You can go get just-in-time access. So if you need a specific access port, or if you need a specific, uh, I would say, you need a specific server access, you can just do that, and you can basically get that around. You can get access to the machines around that as well. Uh, the last one is more of automatically blocking the risky behaviors, which is more of a getting telemetries from your virtual machines, from your servers, making sure that anything that is happening within the server, which is flagged as a risky behavior, that gets automatically prevented, or that gets automatically blocked, and flagging them as a risky behavior, just so your SecOps team can go in and check all of that. Okay. Last but not the least on this is going to be your network access. So the first one, right? First one sounds a little bit dramatic, like be ready to handle the attacks before that happens. It's more from the perspective of you need to make sure, and the first zero trust principle, that you need to assume breach always, and you need to make sure that you are designing your network and you're making sure your network is properly monitored, and anything that is going anomalous, or maybe let's say one thing is accessing another thing in like a every it is accessing after ages, you should be having a look at that. Okay, what exactly is the reason behind that, and why this user is going to a different network segment which you are not allowing, and making sure for that you have a proper segmentation, and you need to make sure that the compromise, the footprint is defined in such a way that not everything is talking to everything. So like the flat network scenarios, right? You have one network, and each and every resource or each and every machine of yours goes into that. It becomes really difficult for you to make sure that, okay, this is my uh, this is my database server, and that there is a jump box which someone has created. That jump box shouldn't be talking to the database server because that is unauthorized or just created for POC or something like that. Okay. One thing apart from the zero trust model, right? And apart from the six pillars of zero trust, what we specifically look at the SOC support for your zero trust deployment, because when we are looking at zero trust deployment, right, we are talking about loads and loads of different tooling and different areas that we should be monitoring, and we should be having controls in place. Basically, we should be having the aligned SOC support, which is going to make sure that anything that is getting in and all the alerts that is getting generated, which basically is getting caught by someone, and having it someone is having a look at that basically, and then you can have a full end-to-end picture around with the six pillars. So the six pillars are doing their own job, and with the SOC support, you're getting everything in place. You're basically keeping the track of everything that is going within the six pillars. So now we'll talk about a quick zero trust architecture from Microsoft. If you have not seen this, this is published by Microsoft, and it is done by NIST, and everyone is aware of NIST. NIST is very renowned in security world. So basically, this is a mapping of Microsoft products in terms of your overall security posture, right? So from endpoint perspective, what you have here is your Microsoft Entra, which is basically going to give you loads of functionalities around your identity management. You have global secure access, which is again two new Entra features that was released I think 6 7 months back, which is totally on the zero trust network access perspective, and it is like identity based network access scenarios. I'll not go into the licensing bits of all of these because it gets a little bit complicated. I have one other slide which briefly touched on that, but we can certainly have a chat around if you are looking at any specific products around this. Now, from your identity perspective, you're covered from Entra specifically, and you're getting all of the global secure access as well with as part of your Entra suite. From endpoint perspective, basically what you're getting is Intune and Defender for endpoint. So Intune will be doing all the device management. You're getting Defender for endpoint, which is going to do the EDR, and you're getting like all of the good stuff around looking into your virtual machines, looking into your servers, and looking into your user devices, basically from Defender for endpoint. All of that, the Entra good bits basically goes into the identity and management thing, which is basically the Entra ID functionality only, where you get the identity governance, where you have the whole of making sure that whoever is coming in, they are coming in from the right sources, making sure your conditional access is in there, and whatever the conditions that you have in there, that it is basically we're getting monitored around that. Uh, you have Azure Virtual Desktops, that is from the perspective of your any of the let's say vendors coming in. I get a loads of inquiries and people asking around, okay, so now we have implemented zero trust network access, and I have allowed only devices which are compliant and which are getting specifically all of the rules of our organization. We will take that on and we will use that only for our critical applications. But now we have XYZ vendor coming in, and they will be working on my solution, and they will be providing support on this solution. How do I manage those? So that's where the virtual desktop scenarios comes in. Then you have two options. You can go with Azure Virtual Desktop, which is bit of deployment scenarios where you have your networks, your machines, and everything. You will be managing that. And the second option that you have is Windows 365, which is just a license based. All you need to do is get a license. There will be a machine. You can connect it with your Intune as well and get your Intune policies. But these two works on the case to case basis, and whatever is your requirement based on that, the right fit around that will be seen from your cloud workloads perspective. And we'll just briefly touch on that. You have Defender, all sort of Defenders, which you can basically put in third-party clouds as well as the Microsoft Azure cloud. So just so you're getting all of that uh, embedded into one single source. And one good thing that Microsoft has started doing is bringing everything at one place, which is your security.microsoft.com, and you will be getting like 360 view of all your defenders and your security posture in the Defender. And all of that can be coupled with your SIEM solution, which is Microsoft Sentinel. So yeah, without going into too much deep into this, this is what we look in terms of Microsoft tooling mapping for all of the zero trust areas, right? This looks a little bit complicated, right? So what we are going to do here is we'll just quickly talk about a very simplified version of this, where we are looking at sorry. Yeah. Where we are looking at the key foundational pillars of zero trust. So you have the zero trust policy optimizations. Basically, you're looking at the compliance policies, you're looking at security posture assessment. These all things are coming in with Defender XDR. You have your zero trust policy in the middle of this, which is basically going to be heart of this, where you are doing all the evaluation, where you are making sure all the enforcement are in there. And in the end of this, there is a threat protection, which is basically again the XDR bits, where you are getting automated response and the continuous assessments, just to make sure that you have everything in place, and how your organization is doing from secure score perspective, how your organization is doing from any like alerts coming in, how you're doing responses around those as well. Now, if we look at this guy from a Microsoft tooling perspective, right, that was a really complicated one, the very first one that I showed, right? And I've tried my best to put some color coding here just to see what you're getting out of E3s, E5s, and other licenses as well, right? So, and don't quote me on this. If I have missed something here specifically, we can have a chat and we can figure out the right licensing for all of these wherever it is required. But more of the three common ones, that is E3, E5, and the business premium perspective, right? So we are looking at the overall scenario converted into Microsoft World. So from identities, you have Defender for Identity, your Entra ID, identity governance. As we talked about, Intune and Defender for Endpoint is going to cover your endpoint scenarios. You have Entra conditional access, which is basically doing the continuous evaluation and enforcement, which is going to be a heart of this, making sure everything is covered from the identity base. You have Entra internet access and the private access, making sure anything that is going in from public networks or private networks to your internal network is basically governed by the zero trust principles over here. From cloud perspective specifically, you have all the Defender here, sorry, or you have all the Defender options like Sub Defender for APIs or Defender. This is just an example over here. And all of that gets coupled with the Defender XDR, which is the endpoint Office 365 identity Defender for cloud, and you're getting all of that at single place. Okay, now the one that all of you are here for, right? And the hook for this, I would say, the webinar, right? We had that rapid zero trust adoption. So all of that looks really overwhelming when we are talking about in terms of implementing these and looking at different areas and what to do, where to start from, and what all we can do. So there is a zero trust adoption program, basically, which is we call it rapid zero trust adoption program. The first step within that is basically going to be your maturity assessment. You can do a maturity assessment by yourself. There is Microsoft links available. You can see where you sit in the zero trust journey. Then you go with all the areas of your identity device, your application, your data, and your infrastructure and your network. Basically, all of the six gets covered. You look at those, and basically then you go for the zero trust adoption, and basically starting with a basis, I would say more of a basic. This will take you to more somewhere between the advanced and the optimal, and then you will be doing the fine tuning around that. So, first question will be here: to be productive, your employees requires only four things. Okay. First thing is they should be having an identity that they can use for their logins, for their, sorry, I think I jumped gun here. Yeah. So they should be having their identities. They should be having some device that they can work on, either a PC, either a tablet, a phone, or something like that that they will be working on. There should be applications available to them to do their jobs. If it's the account team, there should be Sage or anything like that. If it is like, let's say if it is some auditing team, they need their auditing applications, and whatever your nature of business is, they need their business applications for those. And the last one is more of, you need to make sure that anything, your traffic from their laptops, from their devices is flowing to the applications, and it is flowing to the cloud where they need to go for their day-to-day jobs around that, right? So basically, all of those areas, we are looking at only four specific ones that we can cover, and we can cover most of the quick wins around identities, endpoints, and apps and networking. We have talked a lot about all of these, that what exactly it entails from the zero trust perspective. So we are going to look at all of these four areas and what we need to do specific to implementing those, and what exactly that covers. Okay, so moving along here, my keyboard is not working. Okay, here. So specifically from identities perspective, okay. So what do you need within your organization and program from your program members perspective? And one thing, I didn't had much of a space, right? So I haven't put a project manager or a program manager in here. So don't get offended if you are into that area. There is definitely a need of a project manager or a program manager governing the overall implementation in here. But from the technology standpoint, what you need is a security architect coming in, or a security architect within your organization, or identity architect, an identity admin, or and the last one, as you can see, and you will see that all across all different fours that we are going to talk about, is the user education team, because users are going to be the core of this, and you cannot leave your users uh, like decoupled from the IT operations that you are doing. You need to make sure that any implementations that you are doing, there is a proper user training or a proper user communication that is happening on the back of that, just to make sure your users are not feeling themselves stranded, or there is something new pops up on their desktop, and they'll be like, oh, what is that? I'm not able to work on. So within the identity, the deployment objectives from our side will be, come on. Yeah. So, and you can see here on the left-hand side, I have defined what exactly is the role who will be looking after this implementation. And then you might ask that you have one, two, three, four, five guys here, and most of the task is getting done by the two guys here. So the out of the five, the three are more from setting up the guidance principle and then passing it on from the implementation perspective. What we are looking at specifically from identity perspective, the main objectives that you should be looking at initially when you're going for the rapid zero trust adoption is, you have SSPR enabled, you are doing a self-service password reset, every user is able to do that. MFAs and the appropriate MFA methods for your organization. I know going passwordless is the route. You need to make sure that you go passwordless as much as you can, but and go for more of a phishing resistant MFAs, but that will not be a case for every organization. But you need to select appropriate and a level of MFA that you can use. then basically you need to make sure you are having policies in place, which is basically blocking risk-based users. You need to make sure anyone who is coming in from a risky sign-in perspective or a risky activities perspective, they're getting blocked. You need to make sure these weak passwords and everything is not being used. You're putting in a proper password policies, keeping people alive. There is a big debate, and it's a bit controversial topic whenever I go for an implementation, right, around letting your password expire after 60 days. And Microsoft has a really, and I think that is now adopted by NIST as well. So it has been going on from really, really long time that you should not be forcing your users to change their password every 30 or 60 days just to just for the purpose of like keeping them secure, because user tend to start ABC 1 2 3, and then it goes to 1 2 3 4, 1 2 3 4 5, and then it is quite predictable pattern that user tend to use, and that's where it makes it weak. So you need to put a proper password policies. You need to make sure defender for identity is in there, and making sure anything that you have within your domain controllers going on, it is being addressed by the SOC team while you are doing this overall implementation. And the last one here is more of from privileged accounts perspective. So you need to make sure that your and what we used to call a tier 0 resources are not being accessed by normal accounts. They are basically getting a proper attention. You have a privileged identity management deployed, and you're basically making sure anything that is accessing, or let's say you want global administrator role, it is not a standing access on your or on your account. It is going through a particular it is going through a process of approvals either, or it is going through at least an audit trail just to make sure that you have a view of what exactly is happening within your organization. And that basically is glitter in loads of people's eye, because you are doing like half of that already. You just need it to align it 100% with the overall architecture. So with that and the what we have seen in the very first zero trust architecture, right? What we have covered is the identities, your strong authentication that goes into the evaluation and enforcement. So this part of your identities, and you have now built your identity part from for your zero trust. Now, anything going into endpoints perspective in a Microsoft world, again, what we need is the 5 roles. Is it's not the same 5 roles. We have a couple of roles changed around the MDM admins and your security governance admins. But again, as I mentioned, the user education team will remain the same. You need to make sure that your user education is happening at the right point. You are making sure everyone is getting to know what exactly is changing and how they're going to do their day-to-day jobs. And between the two of them, the deployments that you should be looking at is making sure your devices are either joined or registered with Entra ID. You need to make sure the configuration policies are in there. Defender and Intune is onboarded for all of those devices. You are monitoring the compliance of all of those devices, and you have relative conditional access in place. So if there is non-compliant devices, do you want to give them access to XYZ or not? And you have the protection policies, the purview information protection policies, specifically from endpoint perspective as well, is integrated in there for all of your endpoint capabilities. And with the small change, what we have done is we have covered the endpoint part where we are looking at the device compliance, either being a corporate or a personal device. You are basically making sure it is getting properly compliance checked, and anything that is coming in from those devices is basically getting checked by conditional access in terms of evaluation and then enforcement of your policies. Now, from the apps perspective, definitely there is loads of stuff that you can do. One thing will be first one, there are third-party apps and custom platforms apps that is registered with Entra ID. So going with more of, instead of a service account scenario, going with going with workload identities and making sure that is being tagged by conditional access, and Intune app protection policies, just to make sure anything that your organization uses from SaaS or PaaS perspective that is getting in. Any cloud apps, which is basically likes of your Salesforce or Google or anything like that, it's basically being governed by Defender for Cloud Apps. Anything which is not registered within Entra ID, or a pass app, which is not registered within Entra ID, it is getting basically whatever the protocols that it is using, if it is OAuth or it is SAML or whatever it is, it basically needs to have a proper mechanism of having like a view of all the logins and everything. Any on-premises application. So currently, that if you're using a VPN solution and you have it on a traditional VPN authentication functionality, either move it to the Entra authentication, which will basically give you the conditional access capabilities, making sure you can if, let's say, you have a finance application sitting on prem, and the example can be Sage, where on not SaaS version, and you want to get access to that, and if you're just using it with the normal VPN, your VPN connects and the user have access to now your network instead of just the application. So that can be restricted just to on an application basis by just replacing your existing VPN with more of a zero trust centric likes of Entra private access. Or if it is just a web application that your users are using, you can use Entra application proxy, which can give you a view of which can give your users access to those applications, and that will be an identity centric access. They will be evaluated with all the conditional access policies that you have put in before getting into those applications. Okay. And with that, what the part that we are covering is more of a adaptive access to your SaaS as well as your on-premises applications, with the help of more of a Entra app proxy, Intune application protections, and basically Defender for cloud apps specifically for SaaS. Now, the last one within this is going to be your network, and the roles have been again changed. It's because you don't want your MDM people looking at the network parts of this. So definitely, and with the size of organization, there will be definitely might be a combination of this. That's one role somewhere, and that's one role somewhere, which is basically which is totally okay. That, however, this translates into your organizational ecosystem, basically, you should be looking at it from that perspective. So, from the rapid adoption perspective, these are the main deployment objectives that we should be looking at in terms of all the traffic which is going in and out should be encrypted, and you should be having the likes of Azure Firewall in the middle of that, making sure anything and everything that is going in and out, any egress or ingress traffic should be monitored, and you have a proper segmentation around that with the with with your firewall. It can be Azure Firewall, it can be any other Palo Altos or whatever you're using at the moment, just to make sure your traffic is segregated as well. Anything that is coming in from the external access perspective, it is not just going in as we talked about enter private access in the last slide, right? So it should be verified, and based on your user device and user access and user compliance, basically you are getting that. You are making sure anything that is getting detected on the real time from your traffic, from your cloud traffic, basically you are covering those, and you are making sure you are logging all of those, and your SIEM solution is taking all the feeds in, just to make sure that you are acting upon any anomalies that you see within your network. And that's, I believe, the fourth pillar covered, where we have all the network and the zero trust evaluation covered. So that's more or less from the program perspective that we should be covering in terms of getting ourselves ahead of most of the organizations who are currently in process. And it shouldn't be your 5 years plan. It should be like your near future plan to go for a quick adoption, whatever the licenses that you have, go with the least, I would say these are going to be the most low hanging fruits in terms of implementations. Okay, just a quick real world scenario because I have promised that in the agenda as well. So there is a customer scenario I'm talking about where the customer had the four areas where they were looking at. They had these challenges around. They didn't had a proper identity and access management. They had like distributed stuff. There was no user activity analytics, and it was there. There was no privileged identity management, and basically they were looking at from the devices, from the data, and from the monitoring perspective, from their applications and everything. So they had all of these challenges, which was giving them, which was not making their environment a properly secure environment. So basically, without resolving all of those, and then if we all know well, very well, and just in the interest of time, I'll not bore you with all the implications, but definitely there is loads of issues that can happen that can be an email attack, there can be a device going rogue or getting malware infection, and you should not be knowing, or you will not be knowing about that. There will be compliance violation by the user devices and all of the good stuff that we talked about in the previous slides, right? Basically that can go on the other end as well, that can go south, and you can basically have a reputation breach, you can have a big breach within your data estate, you can have compliance violations and loads of other stuff as well. So the architecture that went into that particular customer is more around how we do the overall design for them. It is basically starting from your endpoint and devices, wherein there was a third party RMM involved, there was Intune involved. All of the devices got in Defender for Endpoint, which is basically making sure all the devices are sending telemetry out to Defender XDR. Anything and everything from Windows 11 security perspective went in. From the data security, everything went in. Passwordless went in from the Entra ID perspective with two options, either going with Windows Hello for Business or Authenticator app. Identity protection, Entra-PIM, and identity governance was three pieces that went in from the zero trust perspective. All the conditional access, and I remember that conditional access was almost 20, 25 policies that we are talking about, and specifically from exclusions and inclusions perspective, a well-defined conditional access structure went into place just to make sure that, okay, if someone has, let's say, a location inclusion policy, right? So you have a policy that says, okay, only 5 locations should be allowed, and all of the users are part of that. Okay, but one request comes in, so you shouldn't be going in and removing those users. You have another policy and a group basically defined already. You just need to add the user to the particular group, and you can make it with access reviews. So that access reviews will basically make sure every fortnightly you are getting a notification that, okay, uh, users within your organization has this capability to work from anywhere outside, let's say EEA, and are they still viable? If you say, if the manager says no, these are not the ones, or if the IT says no, these are already expired, the request has expired, they can just pick and choose from the access reviews notification that, okay, these guys should not be there, and they will be removed from that particular group. That will reflect in the conditional access. So that kind of arrangement of almost like a 2025 conditional access, which is basically making the operations easy as well. All of that again ties back to your Defender XDR that goes into SOC, and which is governed by the SIAM hub, what we have, and which basically that is making sure every operations is happening not in silos, it is happening under a single pane of glass. From the internet and internal apps perspective, so there are two specific requirements that the customer had is the users should not be able to access any other tenant than what they have. So just from the perspective of they shouldn't be going in and uploading data to any other Microsoft 365. So they can do it from the if they do it from the network perspective, it will be like blocking the Microsoft Online or a SharePoint.microsoft.com kind of websites straight away, which will basically block their productivity because they will not be able to get into their own tenant. So one thing that we did is within internet access, there is a thing called tenant restriction. So we went in and put in tenant restriction in there as well, and intra-private access for it. It wasn't a because intra-private access was in preview at that point of time, so it went in just for one file share. So now, whenever their internal people from these devices and their AVDs or anything like that, when they go for, let's say, their file share access, which is sitting on premises, that's a traditional SMB file share. You can't do much on that in terms of modernizing the experience around making sure it gets conditional access and all those stuff. That became a proper, I would say, zero trust based, and all the conditional access applied to that. Because whenever you try to do, let's say, my XYZ file share and you try to access that on your laptop, you will be prompted with an Entra ID login. Basically, that Entra ID login is going to check everything on your conditional access based on your policy that you have put in here. If your policy says it should only be accessible from compliant devices, or it should be only be accessible from Republic of Ireland, something like that, then in that case, it will allow or deny based on that. So the traditional file share has got now a more modern authentication functionality. So just so you can get in and you can see and you can do whatever the works stream that you need to do. And you can do that with app proxy for your web applications. Entra ID private access can be done for any of your ports or any of your applications that you want. Uh, the last one from this, and just I think I'm right on time. So the challenges that we see mostly is from the zero trust reviews and the zero trust implementation is more. First thing is the technical complexity, because we have talked a loads of things about that, and you need a proper roadmap in terms of adopting this, because the technical complexity is spanned across the overall estate, not just into a single area of within your organization. Uh, the breadth of your client environment, that's basically is it goes same way. So to basically this, if the way it is spanned across, you basically have to make sure everything is covered and every area you're looking at. One thing is your long-term commitments it comes into as a child challenges. So let's say you have some sort of product which you are using and around network which is not intelligent enough, but you have a 10-year contract with them, that basically can become a problem or can become a challenge within that. So that gets in. And the last one is actually putting all of these into maybe a DevOps backlog or making a project plan around that, okay, what exactly that you want to do. I have, let's say, this estate, I am doing XYZ for my environment, and what exactly is going to be the plan around that. So that these are the challenges that we see within the organization. And if you are seeing all of these as well, basically, you can definitely get in touch with us and we can help you out understanding and creating a plan around that as well. I believe that's all from my side. And thank you so much for joining. We have a QR code on the screen. If you have any questions, you can put in the Q&A sections, and I will try to get onto that as soon as possible. And basically, you can give your feedback based on this. We have a section that talks about if you want us to be talking about any other specific topic or any product itself which you have seen in this slides, we can have an in-depth discussion around that as well. And yeah, over to you, Jenny.
Yeah, guys, thanks a million for attending. We will be sharing the slides afterwards for everyone who attended. So we'll send you Sinead will send a follow-up email after the call. So thanks a million for attending, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks, guys.